can't stand in one place when I speak. Yes, it's great to see you all, and it's even more amazing that when I got here, some people actually understood my Hungarian, which is a miracle within itself. Just to answer some of the questions I've been asked up till now. Yes, there is a definite shortage in Canada of IT people. The main things are BI, business intelligence, and enterprise architects. And welcome anybody who speaks English. Did I just manage to turn this off?
Yeah.
I thought, but yes, I did. Sorry. See, I bring it back. Okay, so there is some items about myself. I recently early retired. In Canada, you can retire when you hit the ripe age of 50 and do other stuff. And so I'm on various boards now. I'm on the ICBC board, which is the largest insurance company in Canada, selling automobile insurance. It has over 15 billion Canadian dollars in assets, over 5,000 employees, and being on the board means that you really are responsible for the overall performance of the organization. So, and as usual, there is directors and officers insurance just in case somebody sues you, because after all, this is North America. I'm also on the board of a sector council that is partially government run to ensure that we get enough people immigrating into Canada who have technology background, because we are so short of qualified people. This is a fun board, the Arts Club. It's a large theater in Vancouver, and it's lots of fun to be there. And that's about all you need to know. This is Vancouver, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, okay.
And we have snow twice a year at most. And then everybody complains and says they need snow tires. But we do have lots of rain. This is where the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, took place in 2010. This is where I used to work, Canada's largest credit union. Simon Fraser University, where I'm executive residence, is there. And I have some bags with goodies in it for people who ask very good questions to encourage it. And those who don't get to answer that, I do have information on Simon Fraser University. The good thing about Simon, I keep hitting the wrong button. The good thing about Simon Fraser University, it doesn't charge more tuition if you're not Canadian. Many universities in Canada have two levels of costs. So if you take the Management of Technology MBA, it's 25,000 Canadian dollars, and it's 200 forint per Canadian dollar. And so what I do when I convert Hungarian is I take 2 zeros out and half it. I find the best. But there is a number of programs, and those programs are in the brochure here. And the one that, and I am on the governing council of Simon Fraser University. So I have to boast, because one of the coolest, greatest program, master's program at Simon Fraser University, is where you can do your program in at four universities: at Simon Fraser, at São Paulo, at Mexico City, and at Nashville. And you get America's MBA for executives. That's a bit more than $25,000. I think around $35,000. But again, it's the same price for Canadian and non-Canadians. The other thing I wanted to tell you about is the Canadian CIO Association. And as Peter said, Canada is slightly larger than Hungary. And we have more than, when this slide was done, it was 290. We just hit 300 CIOs. We only admit CIOs, no vendors as members. Those are just some of the people who have their CIOs belonging to the CIO Association. We have different programs that we, for example, so this is North America, folks. Starbucks is a big thing because no other place makes half decent coffee. And so we have, some of our events are meet at Starbucks and discuss the issue for the day. So an informal get-together of up to a dozen CIOs who have to pre-register at the nearby Starbucks. And it's just before work or after work where people get together. We haven't gotten into boat cruises yet, although I will take the idea back with us. There are once a year we have a conference. Now, you have to understand the distances in Canada. To get from one end of Canada to the other end, it's if you could fly straight through without stopping, which you can't, it would be close to 8 hours flight. And there is between Vancouver and Newfoundland, which is the other end of Canada, it's 4.5 hour time difference. So it's big. Okay. So we have once a year a conference. This year it was in Edmonton, where again we encourage CIOs to attend. This year we had 150, so half of them attended. Next year it's going to be in Toronto, April as well. And one of the things we do, the CIO Association and Simon Fraser University, and you may want to try that, is we commission students to do research for us. And the students want to do it because they want to have it on their resume that they worked with CIOs, real-life CIOs. And it's good for us because they do research. So I brought with me 2 papers that you can look at. One was that we got from the European CIOs on reselling software licenses. So if you have a contract for 100 Oracle licenses and you no longer need it, so you could resell it to another CIO. And so the students created a paper to be submitted to the Canadian government to do that. The other one I brought with me is if you sign a cloud computing contract, what terms should you have in there so that when you decide to change to a different provider, that you are allowed to change. So what should be the contract terms that you have in the contracts so you are able to change to another provider. Both of these I leave over there if you want to look at it. So they do this for us at no cost. They are just so happy to have CIOs actually talk to them, and we get very good research and exchange from them. And you can see that from the paper. If you would like copies of any of these, just send me an email. And Peter has my email address. So today I was going to talk about change. So there are 3, if you want your children to come to Canada and they are in IT, there are 3 skills that we're really looking for. I already mentioned 2, BI and enterprise architecture. Change management is the 3rd. In Canada, we believe that you cannot implement any projects without having change management as part of it, to teach people what is going to change. Because regardless of how good your technology is, if people don't like it, they will just not use it. And then it doesn't matter that you have fancy technology, it will never be implemented. And we have had examples of that, let me tell you. So this is a definition of change management, where change is planned. There is a process from getting you to do things differently. And the way I talk about it is, when I talk to my IT folks, is pretend you have to take a different way to work tomorrow. And think about how long it will take you to make that automatic, that you do not have to think about it. And then add to it that you get paid for it, and then realize how much change management matters. the key success factors to have proper change management is that people know why you change it, and they understand and buy into it. That you have the business leaders behind you, because if the business leader says, "Oh, it's just something from IT," really, you don't need to listen to it. It will never happen. Everybody has to say the same thing. We say in Canada, sing from the same song sheet. So everybody has to give the same message. You have to celebrate short-term wins. Even if it's a little bit of change you see, you have to celebrate it and communicate it. And then it's not enough just to observe a temporary change. It has to be what's called anchored, meaning it stays with the people. It has to be done over and over again. Different projects require different kind of change management. So if you upgrade Windows, slightly different change management than if you implement a new system. There's really not much probability that you can just say, "I hate the new Windows," although we all hate the new Windows, and we all hate all the features in it, but you have to use it, like there's no choice. Versus a business application where the business process changes. So you change the way you do things. You can borrow this slide anytime you want. When asked, would you rather work for change or just complain? 81% of the respondents replied, "Do I have to pick?" It's hard. So I thought that was very well said. We all hate to change. So here is a change curve, and it shows how much discomfort happens when you change, and how can you minimize the discomfort. And if you are proactive about the change, so you plan ahead that there will be changes, it's easier to get the organizational performance to a future state. But if you are reacting to the change, so you didn't plan for it, it takes a lot longer, and no change meaning you're on the bottom of the pile. So I included this slide because it gives you a good idea on how we map processes. So this is an existing process map. And I borrowed this from my Van City days, and Van City is Canada's largest credit union. It's a financial institution. And we had good policies or guidelines that said the good enough principle. So when we implement a new system, every business user, everybody in business wants just a little bit more change to the new system. And we say, can you live without it? Is it good enough as is? And if it is, then we go and good enough. Now you need your CEO to back you. In our case, the CEO, we were implementing a package, and the CEO went to the senior executives and said, there are 400 other organizations using this package, but if any of you folks out there, you people out there want to change, here is the form. You fill it out and the CEO has to sign it, and by the way, it will directly affect your bonus. That was one change. So as soon as you feel that your bonus is in danger, you're very careful about what you ask for. So that's what the good enough principle, the adopt versus adapt. So the packages usually reflect best practices, so you need to adapt to it. Wish list is what I was talking about. Wouldn't it be great that you can? So key business processes are mapped out just like that. And again, this is a credit union, so you see mortgages and such. I thought it would be useful to see how we do that. And then show the project process change and where there is a gap. And again, this was directly borrowed from a presentation we did to the board. There was a committee of the board that looked after the big change. So from my experience in being on the board of the largest insurance company in Canada, there aren't that many IT people on board, so they sort of said, you know how to spell IT, could you please head the committee that oversees the $400 million project that replaces the legacy system. So having more people on boards that have IT experience really helps, because you can tell senior management, it's unlikely that that would ever happen, or really change comes from the top, not from the bottom. So I included this slide because at Man City we had, and I'll read you the text in a minute, I see people in the back trying to see what's that. So we had a 35-year-old banking system that was older than some of the programmers I had working for me. And so I had to go to the board and say, could you please give me $65 million to replace this old system, just so that we have the same system as we had before, but on a newer platform. And none of the board members would have listened to me. So I had two slides. One was the financial one, but this was my first slide. This is a 1975 Oldsmobile, and it looks absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, there is no more leaded gas sold in Canada, and it doesn't have an airbag, which is mandatory in Canadian cars. And if you want to install a CD player in the car, you have to take up the entire passenger seat to install it. And if you are looking for a mechanic, it's almost impossible to get. And I said, that's what our banking system looks like. It looks very nice from the outside, but when you look under the hood, it is really, really old. And so I figured that it would take about 3 meetings of the board to approve $65 million. They approved it at the first meeting because they could relate to the issue. And even though it looks great, it just doesn't function. And I said, there will not be any productivity improvement. It's like providing water and sewage to an apartment building. Nobody rents an apartment because it has water and sewage. But if it doesn't have it, then you can't rent it. So it's a necessity to have it. And as I said, it was approved. And we did start it. So, am I still on time?
9 minutes more.
So these are the highlights. That change management is key for a successful project implementation. You can't expect to implement a project without allocating money. So when we plan, when we do our project plan, 20% of our project budget is for change management. And Canadian universities have started training change management specialists. There are surveys and questionnaires that assesses the case numbers, meaning before the change begins, and during and after. You need to have the business sponsor behind you and push for the change. You need to communicate properly and celebrate short-term wins, and you have to reinforce it long time in order for the change to take place. So now I'm open for questions, and remember, it's not a bribe, it's a gift. And you can ask in Hungarian, but I won't be able, I'll answer in English.
Kérdések? 15 percig kérdések. Ne felejtsétek el az acskót.
Okay, yes?
I have one question, and I will state it in English if you don't mind. You mentioned that few IT people are in boards in Canada. And this leads to the question, what is the general opinion about IT people in the business community? What is the typical relation in your country between these two worlds?
Okay, so the question was, what's the relationship between IT people and the boards in Canada? So for a long time, IT people were considered to be techies. In English, there's a word called propeller heads. And because nobody could understand what they are doing. But as as every organization needs IT, IT people have become much more important. One of my staff suggested, he said, I can't understand why you keep talking about how to measure the value of IT. Just shut down the computers for one day and see how many people can take out money. I said, nah, maybe not. But in Canada, the organization understands how important ITs, mainly because the largest part of the capital budgets in almost all of the organizations goes to IT. So every board now looks for an IT person to be on the board, and there is a corporate director's training that you take before, and get certified before you become a director. And there is a half a day devoted to IT there. So IT people are getting more and more respect because everybody wants to be able to use IT. And Gardner has a cute term called the AMS, the Airline Magazine Syndrome. So when your boss comes back from a trip and says, read something in a magazine and says, could you have this done by tomorrow? That's called AMS. So it's really important that that IT people talk in business terms. So not to say this project is great because it has cool technology, but say what it does for the business. The car, I didn't focus on the car so much, but on the business side of things. So that's where it comes from.
Józsi?
Give the gentleman who asked gets it. Sorry.
Parancsolj, majd elveszik a szünetbe, igen? Parancsolj.
We have heard that enterprise application management is a hot topic in Canada. I would like to know if it is a fashion or the widespread practice in corporations.
I couldn't get it too.
Can you speak louder?
No,
Yes,
I give you
of
the
course.
mic.
Enterprise architecture management, I would like to know if it's a fashion for the CIOs now or the information community, or it is a widespread practice in corporations.
Enterprise architecture usually reports to the CIO, and the reason it's so important is because many organizations have bits and pieces of technology, of different kinds of technology. Do you understand the term of jigsaw puzzle? You know, pieces that you put together. So each piece, each technology is designed very well, but it doesn't fit into a jigsaw into a picture. So what the enterprise architect does, it makes it fit into the same picture. And there's very few of those people who understand both business and technology, and those are the enterprise architects. And there are not enough of them in Canada. And so we hire each other as enterprise architects, believe it or not, to fight for it.
You mentioned that there are not so many IT people in Canada what should be. You told us about the university. How is the education going on in Canada? So how do you prepare students to become CIOs or become high-level IT people?
So the question was, how do we prepare students to become CIOs and IT people? There's a lot of co-op programs that various organizations sponsor. That means when you get your first degree, which is the bachelor's, you study 4 months and work 4 months, and study 4 months and work 4 months. And you work as an IT person. So by the time you graduate, you can have up to 2 years of experience. So we're not only looking at for the academic credential, but also for work experience. And then you can't get your bachelor's and immediately get your MBA. You have to work in between. You will not get accepted into the MBA. So that's how we make sure. Communication skills are extremely important, and now we test for communication skills. So one of the things that I did for people who were in non-supervisory position, gave them a piece of paper and a stapler. You have stapler, and said, explain to someone who has never used a stapler how to use it on one page. They told me about the written communication skills, their logical thinking, and how many, percentage-wise, how many do you think actually said what the stapler was there for, what the purpose of the stapler was? Yeah, about 50% of the people did not mention what the purpose of the stapler was, just how to use it. They didn't get hired.
Nagyon szépen köszönöm.